Hi everybody, this is Amanda Hosenfeld from ComplianceLIVE. You'll notice that you're about to pick up in the middle of a conversation with our co-CEOs and chief servants, Nick and Gio Gallo. This is part 2 of our candid discussion with them. So if you haven't heard part 1, go back and listen to that first, and then come right back here for the rest of the conversation. And now please enjoy part 2 of our culture conversation with Nick and Gio. So you said just a second ago that it sounds trite, but you want to make a difference in the world. You guys are first generation Americans. Mm-hmm. So tell us about that.
Yeah, so our grandfather had built a good life in Cuba, and at some point they had the revolution, their business was taken over, and my father and his sisters at the time, he had a brother born later, but my father and his sisters came over to the U.S. as refugees. So that, on that side of the family, that has kind of defined the view of kind of what are we doing here? What are you doing with your life? Where eventually, the kids were here for over 6 months, and then my grandparents got out and met up with them, but they were really fleeing this really disastrous situation where they weren't going to be able to provide a good life. And they came here to the US, where for all the problems that we have, all the stuff that we need to work on as a country and a culture, it's the same kind of stuff that we're trying to help people work on within companies. This is a place where if you work hard and you treat people right, there's an opportunity for advancement. There's an opportunity to grow not just your kind of comfort and safety, but also your impact and thrive. And that was something that, as we grew up in our family, we moved around a lot. Our parents were working hard, from the time when we couldn't afford much to, get us into a place where, we were more stable and things like that. As we saw that experience of, hey, our parents are working really hard, things are tough at home and they're stressed out and stuff like that, but we're climbing and they were doing better year after year. Mm-hmm. That was something that was really ingrained in us at a young age. And then eventually when they started their own business, it really kind of changed things for us and the life that our family had, but also Nick's and my perspective on kind of what to do with this life.
Yeah. So, we were sort of told this story, this American dream story. You can work hard and create opportunities. And then we hear that, we're hearing that. This is the lens that we're seeing the world through. And then we see our parents achieve exactly that, right in front of us, moving from the worst neighborhoods to the second to the worst neighborhoods and working really hard. And then we're in the third to the worst neighborhood. You know what I'm saying? Moving up through that, moving through neighborhoods with people that have lived there for years and years and weren't able to crawl up out of that bucket. Well, we've got to see this thing that they said exists actually be proven. And I think, Gio mentioned that we moved around a lot. Maybe this is kind of tying in, or maybe this is the foundational element on why we're so sort of culture forward. But, our family came from a different culture. We moved around a lot, so we always kind of felt like outsiders. Mm-hmm. Our family was really big on values, and our family culture kind of served as like a cloak around us and kind of preserved us and galvanized us through all those trials and all those years of us moving around and, trying to crawl up out of that barrel. We could see that, we were different than people around us in this neighborhood. And then we're around this demographic and we're different than those people. And over time, we started to see that these differences, and it was really, like I said, an incubator or like an insulation or something. It allowed us to sort of blossom and be ourselves more, right? Like we felt safer in that sort of cocoon, however you want to talk about it. And then we also saw the sort of transformative effect that glue of similar values, similar principles that actually are the foundational frameworks for decisions that are made and how you behave and how you interact with people and so forth, how those can actually influence everything. And there's a certain cohesion that comes along with that. So for us, it's always been culture. It's always been about people. And to be able to come into this company that is, again, sort of we're selling culture, we're selling risk mitigation and culture enforcing solutions to clients that have much bigger impact than we do. It really resonated with us, and to be able to come in and affect our culture in a positive way, to unleash the people and the thoughts and ideas that we sort of had an inkling or thought might be there. To see that transform over the last 3 years it's been really exciting to watch and be a part of, and it's also been a really strong confirmation for me around like the importance of culture. Like it's obviously a buzzword with our generation. Everyone talks about it. Like we're more sort of values forward, ethics forward. You know, this is not, you know, the 50s where, look, kid, you just get a good job and you stay there for 30 years and you retire with a nice pension. You know what I'm saying? It's not that anymore. People are making decisions. They're prioritizing ethical workplaces or purpose or these kinds of things. And that different perspective of the sort of younger generation that's now sort of the biggest chunk of workers in the population and that are starting to age and coming into positions of more prevalence. I think that as that continues, there's a much bigger impact for culture to be this transformative, explosive, you know, unleashing force that can open the way for each company to do more good in the world.
Yeah, and it was cool because we saw, you know, we saw the impact of values and culture in our own family as we moved around, and how that benefited us and made us, you know, tight and love each other and stuff like that. Then we saw that applied to our parents' business as they were building that business and how they successfully took care of their employees, took care of their clients, and that allowed them to grow the business and take care of our family. And Nick and I just had this, you know, this passion, this drive of like, wouldn't it be cool? Like, who knows how it'll happen, but wouldn't it be cool if we could do that type of transformation and growth and run a business together someday? And we had already done the crazy thing of like, you actually get along with your sibling. We had figured that out in the first like 2 to 15 years or something. But, you know, we said, well, this seems to work. It worked for our family. It worked for our family business. What if we could do this on a larger scale? So, you know, we set off on our journey of like, we were the first in our families to graduate college. And, you know, we went and kind of saw how the big guys did it and, you know, did professional services and stuff like that, always trying to kind of find this path to the mountain that we would climb. That was, let's run a great company and let's change people's lives through business by providing opportunity to employees and really actually serving the client that is on the other side of that interaction. And, you know, we luckily found the mountain that is ComplianceLine. We're climbing.
How's ComplianceLine changed you? What's different now than 3 years ago?
So I think it's helped me to kind of realize and reprioritize what matters. And as that's happened, you know, Nick and I, our parents really prioritized education for us, for example. And they were like, you should learn this stuff and learn from people who have gone before you and stuff like that. And that's a big piece of it. But I think that because it was the water that we swam in, I maybe didn't realize that culture and values can be an even bigger impact than what you know, because you can grow your mind, but if you don't have the action of your heart that is actually going to drive how you make those decisions in those trade-offs, then all of that knowledge is not going to really get the result that you want. So I think it's helped me understand that like the ways, so one is just doubling and tripling down on the importance of how we do our work, how our people work together, the culture and values that we have. I think it's kind of move that from one thing in the mix of what you know in your network and all of this, like one thing in this mix, to really the bowl that holds all of that together. And then another thing that it's changed me is, you know, helped me to not just look for the right answer, but the right answer for the person in their situation. Kind of like we talked about that strategy session that we had, where some people were like, you know, I'm not used to giving this input. I'm not sure what to say, realizing that, you know, this goal that we have, this mountain that we're climbing, someone's going to walk up this path, someone's going to walk up that other path, someone's going to need a little bit more help through this piece, and helping to make our culture one that adapts, that really serves people as individuals instead of serving this monolith that is ComplianceLine employees. And I think that that's helped me become more empathetic. It's helped me think through how do we get the outcome that we are going for, rather than just the progress in the short term that we're working on. And like part of what I've realized as we've gone through this process is that really what we're doing here and what we're all doing in our lives is not trying to put a plan together to get to a goal, but we're on a path. And when we're on the right path, then we're making progress on that path, and orienting toward that allows us to, I think, see things differently, and allows me to be more adaptive to, okay, we have this person on the team now, they need this, or this thing is changing for our clients, we need to be able to fill that need. And a lot of times from the outside, it looks like, well, you're still kind of going to develop that product or give coaching to that employee. but the heart and the you know, the actual kind of touch of that, I think becomes different when you get the priority of those values and that empathy right.
And I know this question wasn't geared towards me necessarily, but I
Okay.
have an answer.
I
too.
actually was going to ask you.
Good.
Actually, I was
Like read your mind.
Yeah.
We're so in tune. I think that you talked about empathy, and that's the piece that's really I've seen like grow and change, especially in the hotline.
Yeah.
You know, I think a lot of call centers are really focused on like productivity. Let's get them on and off the phone, and they don't focus on making sure their employees have the heart to care about the
That's right.
person
Yep.
that they're talking to.
Right. There's a person on the other phone.
They're
on the other phone. It's not just a bunch of words pouring through a device.
In our business, it's so important because we're hearing about these really like trying situations and these really, you know, troubling issues. So
And it's crazy what goes on out there in companies.
it's crazy. It is. So I think it's hard as an employee here to hear a lot of those stories.
Right.
And, you know, it could really beat you down, but the culture that we've created together allows us to kind of focus on, well, despite how challenging this is for me to listen to, it's so important that I just show this person on the other end of the phone that I care.
Right.
You know, I care as much as I can possibly care in my position. And then it just gives you a sense of gratitude for the life that you have and the workplace that we've created together.
Right.
You know, because it's.
Yeah, and I'm glad you keep saying that because, you know, we're on podcasts and we're in interviews and these people are saying, you know, this great culture that you created. And it's like, I didn't create this. Gio didn't create this. We all created this together. And a culture is not going to be created by edict of us posting something on the wall, like I was saying. It's going to come sort of organically. It's going to spring up out of the ground. And to your point, if we, like, this culture wouldn't be a real thing if we didn't do it this way, or put it another way, you wouldn't be saying this if our culture wasn't an actual feeling, right?
Yeah,
like,
it wasn't authentic.
Yeah, I think
That's
people sort of virtue signal with our culture, like new people coming in, because it all sounds good, and you walk through the halls, and you can tell that people actually like each other, and we're actually like purposely or purposefully, you know, moving toward this goal. But to a point that Gio made earlier, when people got in and they were very uncomfortable by the candor, the radical candor, or the actual transparency, or it's an apolitical organization, so these little games that you used to be able to play over here, they don't play here because we're a united front and we're actually all on the same team and we actually all get along, like all these things that no one can like wrap their head around. It's super, you know, uncomfortable for some folks.
Yeah, they expect us to take the hat off.
Yeah, they're like, okay, that sounded really good.
Yeah.
Now what does it really mean?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's what we really meant. And I think because we built it together, it's so much easier to do it.
Right.
And it's the principle of not having just raving fans in our clients, but having them in our coworkers. Like our coworkers are ComplianceLine cheerleaders.
That's true.
Well, how can anyone love your company if your own people don't love your company?
They're like disgruntled and
walking around with all of this tension and
because it comes through in everything. Because that heart, again, this is that work-life integration, not balance of like, if that's the heart, then it's going to come through. And if you're unhappy at work or you feel ripped off all the time, then that's going to come through in some of your interaction, whether it's your tone of voice or saying no gruffly or just, you know, not actually getting the job done. All that stuff is going to come through.
Yeah, it's all going to come through. And for a culture to be truly authentic, it has to be, you know, real, and it has to be integrated. To your point, I mean, just think of how ironic it would be if we're selling solutions to companies to give their employees a voice, and yet people within our company don't have a voice.
It's just they'll say anything.
It's insane. Hey, this is a great transparency solution, but we are not transparent. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's just it's either all one thing or it's all another thing. It's just one or the other.
And it's very much all like one thing in that we like live out that I care about what you have to say. And push that onto our clients as well.
And not that it's not hard. I mean, like
it's
we have a raving fans mentality here with our coworkers, but it is effort.
For sure.
To be
99.5%,
180% effort.
Which explains why so many people don't do it.
That's right.
Yeah.
Because it's easier to focus on, hey, well, let's just kind of shut that person up and we'll make a little bit more money this quarter. Or, okay, well, you know, like when we did that strategy session, people were like, is this like, do I have to book PTO for this or whatever? It's like,
how much is lunch? They said.
Yeah. And like, people ask those types
True.
of questions
That's
because
true.
It's true.
So
But
true.
people ask it because that's like the standard, and that's what a bunch of other people do. And the reason that's the standard is because it's the easy path in the short term. And we choose to have a long-term mentality when we're building a client relationship, when we're building an employee relationship, or when we're building this culture, because it takes a bunch of effort. And there's a bunch of time that Nick and I are training employees or helping someone become a better manager or working on these things that are part of our culture that are not driving direct revenue this week or something like that. Right. But we believe that it's the right way to serve our team. It's the right way to serve our clients. And we think that when you create that beautiful bouquet of all the right people and values and service elements, then that's going to come out in success eventually. And to a certain extent, if we give up some growth in the next month for it, we're willing to do that to stand by our people and to serve people best.
So my favorite part of the show is tips, like takeaway tips. Are we there yet?
Sure.
Because I've been on the edge of my seat. I've come up with a couple during just kind of our conversation. These are like purely organic. But I think we are talking about relationships now. So relationships are really the kind of building blocks of culture.
100%.
How could you have a good culture if the people you work with and who work for you hate each other? So right. I think that a good
unless hate is a really good value that like your clients hire you for that.
I mean, we took it off our wall for a reason.
But I think if the important thing about ComplianceLine and the service that we provide for our clients is we offer employees of organizations an opportunity to share issues they're having with other coworkers and their relationships with their peers.
Right.
So if without a way to kind of vent and hopefully get some help resolving those potentially bad relationships within the organization, maybe it would be harder for that organization to build this positive, like uplifting culture.
Yeah, it's almost impossible.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then so tip number 2 would be that we've talked about servanthood a lot throughout this conversation, and you've said the word impact a lot too. So I think that the purpose of servanthood is to have an impact on not only the people who work for you and work for your organization, but also the marketplace that you serve and just the world.
Like, I mean, you either build or destroy.
So cheesy, but that's true.
I mean, it is what it is. So you know what? I jumped into the cheesy pool. I'm there. So because we can actually
women around.
Yeah. Give this guy some chips for the queso.
But I mean, we actually can. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? It's not like we have a little dog walking business and we're going to change the world by walking dogs better. I mean, we can actually affect people's lives. And to Gio's point, the place where they spend most of their time. And it never really made any sense to me how. Like I was saying, you're either building or destroying. You're either serving or you're being served. So if you're not serving, then you're being served. It doesn't add up in a properly drawn
there it is.
Board structure. You know what I'm saying?
We need a visual here.
There's no room for it.
I think that's true, and we all we talk about that all the time here. So I think you serve to create impact and to make sure that everyone's kind of living with and working with a purpose.
And you know what? We're all built to serve. At the core, if you see a little kid who's 2 or 3 years old, all they want to do is just jump in and help. Give them a fork to put away from the dishwasher, and they're thrilled. That's how we're wired, right? But we get into the world and we get beat up and we get taken advantage of and we get jaded, and you got to put on that armor and you got to kind of stay back and you have to put the facade up to protect yourself. This is all self-preservation things, but all those end up doing is creating effectively a prison for ourselves that prevents us from having those authentic connections, which is what everybody wants, from establishing a true community, which is what everyone is actually going for, and unleashing our gifts that we've been, that we're born with, to make an impact on the world. I mean, that's really what everybody wants.
It's like you knew what my next tip was.
It's almost like I can read upside down.
Can you? So when you were talking about your family, you talked about this cloak of kind of values, the cloak of family values that your parents kind of protected you guys with. And I think that it's really important for a culture, a good workplace culture, to have a cloak of values.
100%.
Something that where we all feel kind of binded by and that protect us and shield us from challenges in the workplace. Because ComplianceLine alone, over the past 3 years, we've had a lot of hardships and challenges and big things to overcome together. But we're here today because we've had that cloak.
And I mean, think about if we didn't have those, we'd be all over the place.
We'd be broken.
Totally.
Yeah, there's a lot of conversations that when we walk into them, it's like, all right, before we talk about this major issue, what value?
Yeah.
What is the value
exactly.
that we're trying to bring forward?
That's a
where are we
phenomenal
going with
point,
it?
and maybe you want to add that to the fourth point. But
Sure.
Like,
It's almost like you came up with these during the show.
So like every company, big or small, they have a values page and they have a mission statement and a purpose statement. All that is like basic, right? Everybody has it. But I think the magic comes from when you take that off the wall or you take that off the website, and it actually influences how we live, right?
How you treat someone, what decisions you make, how you deal with trade-offs, what you do in a tough situation.
Yeah,
all
what
that.
you celebrate, what you reject, all those kinds of things. And you brought up a great point that I think is an easy, get going with it today type of a tip, that if you want to take these words off the wall, you want to actually influence how people live with them, you need to talk about them all the time. You need to incorporate them all the time. So when you're disciplining someone, it needs to be around a value thing, not you're a bum, you stink. It's you're on this team for a reason. You have gifts that we're trying to tap into and give you the ability to unleash, but this behavior doesn't really coincide with tenacity. It doesn't really coincide with accountability. It seems like you're pushing off on accountability here, and then tie it back to our purpose. We're trying to make a difference in the world. We're trying to provide people who care with great information so that they can reduce risk and drive cultures at their organizations, right? So by incorporating those, hey, here's your raise, here's your promotion, here's your award, and this is really driven by this. We need to celebrate them and talk about them all the time, pull those off the wall and show and model to everybody else on the team, particularly new folks who are just kind of acclimating and like, all right, I heard a bunch of great stuff. What's actually the lay of the land here? When they hear that, they say, okay, well, it's actually real, right? It actually begins to influence our behaviors.
Yeah,
go ahead.
Getting them comfortable with our type of workplace sometimes is challenging.
Totally challenging,
especially
if they've lived in a super political organization for the last 10 years. Like the muscles you have to develop in that kind of a place where it's not about authenticity, it's about being invulnerable, right? And not showing any vulnerability or showing any weakness or whatever. You trade off authenticity and you trade off, genuine, impact potential.
And that's part of why we think this is so important. We think it's so special. We see that it's rare, is that, you can hire a consultant or you can go find an exercise online to walk through some stuff and put some values together. And everyone should have a mission statement. And like, that is part of the game, but like, that's not the game. The game is where it impacts people in your business, and the consultant or the exercise is not going to be around 2 days, 2 months, 2 years later, when that's fire needs more wood on it. And you need to keep feeding that fire, and you need people on your team to be getting sticks and getting logs and putting it on that fire.
That's great.
And that's your job as a leader. Whether, and we say here that everyone's a leader, whether you're on the front lines, you're a temp, or you're in support, or, you're part of the executive team. We're all influencing people and we all have an impact to make. And if you're a leader of anything, part of your job is taking those values, those things that you've decided are, this is why we exist and this is what we're doing, and dedicating time and effort and money and relationship capital and all of that to making that happen. And, we've talked about this in some of our KPI team stuff of, as a leader, you need to make sure not just that the work gets done, but that the team builds so the team can do the work. And that's part of this thing that we talk about, that Nick and I realize that Nick and I can't run this company by ourselves. We can't answer all these calls and be here 24/7 and have all the expertise. We need a team around us to do this. And I think that when you're oriented that way, you're going to realize that pushing and modeling and celebrating those values is an essential part of each of our job as a leader, not just something that's decided once every 4 years and then you update the plan.
That's right.
So I think the tip is then new tip now.
Now
we have 5.
Wow. All right.
Don't just hang your values on the wall, but like find a way to weave them into the day-to-day.
You can put them on the wall. It's cool to do that.
Both.
Yeah, both.
Take your words off the wall.
Right?
Yeah.
Right. Copyrighted Amanda Hosenfeld 2019.
Hey, Mark, did you get that?
Did you get
And then I think just the last tip, I want to talk again how important treating people well is, because if everyone can, two companies can have the same amount of knowledge, offer the same service, but you always feel better at the fast food restaurant,
You can say it.
where I'm not going to say the name, but they always like, it's my pleasure to to
Yeah,
Like,
right.
how nice is
How
that to
nice.
hear? It's so refreshing.
It's the same business as McDonald's.
Yeah, even
Can
if
I
they
say McDonald's?
I don't know.
Mark, can she say McDonald's?
No.
All right, we're good.
We're good, good. But even if they like, my fries are cold, I'm not mad at them.
Right. Why?
Because they treated me with kindness. Like it's so much easier to have grace for someone who treats
That's
you
right.
with kindness.
And they treat you with kindness and they convey that they care. And even though they don't know you, they actually do care about every person that comes up to that register. And it's conveyed.
In every order that they send out to you, every
That's right.
every service that they
there's an
provide.
engagement level that comes along with it. There's a feeling that you on the other end of it get. You know what I mean?
And that's part of this battle that we're fighting as a company to make sure we have a good culture, and we're partnering with our clients to fight every day to make sure that their people are safe, they identify risk and take care of their people. Is that as our culture has become so transactional, it's this kind of what have you done for me lately?
Exactly.
And you know, I think this is in Rockefeller Habits. It's a good book if you guys haven't been through it, but it talks about how you really should lead with giving.
Right. And
you have to give first in order to build this growth and this community and this culture and stuff like that. And we do that as a company of we're going to invest in you up front and we're going to give you grace and, you know, work through this problem with you or whatever it is. When you're transactional, it's like, well, give me a contract and some money, then I'll do something for you. And when you have this culture that we're building here of servanthood, it's I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt. I'm going to jump in and model what it's like to build a good relationship and company and stuff like that. And we believe that, you know, if you go out to be a friend, you're going to find a lot of friends.
Right.
And when you're just looking for someone to be nice to you in order for you to be nice, or kind, or servant oriented or whatever, you're not going to find a lot of it because people have all those shields up. But we as a company, we decide, and you know, I recommend that any leader that wants to drive this transformation, we decide to give first, and we think that builds a much better community, a much better culture, and it makes people's lives better.
Well, it's the only way to actually do it, right? I mean, you can kind of use a farming analogy, like you need to give seeds to the earth if you want to get these crops.
Yeah.
You don't say, give me the crops and then I'll throw some seeds there, right? So, and if you want to carry that farming analogy forward, you need a long-term focus. You don't plant a seed today and then tomorrow you have an orange grove, right? It takes time for that to grow. So,
and you shouldn't expect an orange grove.
You shouldn't
tomorrow.
expect it, but you should expect that if I plant these right and I plant them in the right
And I
rows
water
and the
them.
right spacing and I do the right things and I make sure that they have enough sunlight, I know eventually I'll have a great
That's right.
orange grove, right? So it's the faith and the long-term focus that what I'm giving today is going to create, to Gio's point, the environment that's going to allow people to flourish. If you can hold on to that, it'll prevent you from naturally sort of drifting back toward the kind of transactional, what have you done for me lately, get it together, you're out of here type of mentality that a lot of companies live out every day, right? That short-term focus, I'm managing to earnings, I'm managing, you know, a public company managing to the next quarter's earnings release and so forth, that causes you to, you know, forego that long-term focus on the short term, often to the detriment of your people, to your culture, ultimately to your client, to the bottom line, to all the things that everybody cares about.
And I think it's easier to manage that way.
It's a lot easier.
Eventually.
But
I mean, you got to put the effort in up front. Like,
That's
it
right.
becomes easier when you have a good culture and it can, you know, self-reinforce. It takes that effort up front though, and I think a lot of people kind of tap out. But you were saying some more about that.
our way is harder. It's the harder way to manage that way, kind of managing to, well, what have you done for me lately? That's the easier way.
Yeah.
But the results
by
are better.
authority, you know, I'm carrying a stick and you're going to get fired if you don't do what I say.
When I want your opinion, I'll give it to you. I mean, it's all that kind of thing. It's all that feeling, you know?
And we believe that if you think that the contractual terms are the only thing that is necessary for thriving, then you're missing a bunch of it. Whether it's with an employee and like, why do you want coaching and guidance from me? I pay you, so you figure it out. That kind of employment contract or the client contract of like, hey, you know what? It's not in the terms and conditions, so I'm not going to answer the phone or something. Like, we believe that when you do that, you leave a lot of beauty on the table. And also you're not really understanding that this is not about language in a contract and, you know, ones and zeros in IT. There are people behind all of these things that we're trying to do, and that takes more than what you're going to just have in this transactional relationship. Right.
Your tips were great.
Thanks, Amanda.
You're very welcome.
Then those other couple that I threw in were also pretty
great.
Pretty good.
Also great. You're right.
And I thank you for joining like our culture talk today. This is something we should do again.
Yeah, we talk on the pod a lot about culture. Like that's a huge, you know, growing stone from
we layer it into a lot of our
conversation, whether it's diversity or horror stories or whatever we're talking about. The bottom line is always culture.
It's all
It's
culture.
the air that everyone breathes, and to ignore it is, it's to the detriment of not just the success of a company, but of your people.
And we've really enjoyed having you on. It's been really enlightening
Thank
to
Glad to be
learn
here.
about a lot of that stuff. So your tips were great.
Thanks.
Your tips were great.
They were
Tips.
great.
They were
Yeah.
great. Yeah. Come back.
I'd love to. Yeah,
Yeah,
this is
please
great.
come
I
back
love talking
anytime.
about this stuff. This is the most powerful. This is like jet fuel for a company. You can get this right and you can affect it. A lot of folks just think, well, it's intangible or it's amorphous or it's ethereal and I can't really affect it. So here we'll throw something on the wall and cross our fingers and just say that these things are important. If you can actually get it working, it just multiplies everybody's impact. It's just crazy.
And I think like to listeners, try what we're talking about if you think that it will help you in your organization. And I'm sure that anyone here can answer any like questions that we didn't answer.
Give us a
Reach
call.
out.
I mean,
Give us a chance to serve, even if we don't have a contract
Right.
yet.
Yeah, right. I mean, look, we're gonna just keep throwing seeds everywhere. Okay, there's gonna be a bunch of apple orchards. We're gonna be kind of Johnny Appleseeds. We're gonna be giving out value, and we're gonna make an impact on the world one way or another. But we're not gonna be so transactional with it, where it's gonna be this quid pro quo all the time. If you do the right things, you get the right outcomes. You plant the right seeds and treat them right, you get the crops that you want.
And I just want to, what's that?
We want our own produce.
Yeah,
We
sure.
do, and it does
Yeah,
look great.
nice apples. I appreciate both of you. Both of you are on this podcast, not just because you're so wonderful at doing the podcast, but you guys get what we're doing here.
Exactly.
And you guys are leaders within our organization, and you're able to lead this podcast well because you live our values well. So I appreciate the way that you guys do that. There are a bunch of other people who live our values well, so you're not the only ones. Just in case the rest of you guys are watching, and no favoritism or anything like that. But really, this Compliance Live podcast is part of us leading with giving, trying to make an impact, even if we don't have that contract. And I think you guys do a great job with this, and I think it's because you do a great job in the rest of the stuff you do here at Compliance
Thank
Live.
you. That's kind of you.
Gio.
A huge thank you to our pre-production team for putting together our list. Michelle, Will, Bria, and Jess, and Karen, and thank you them. Thank you, Matt, for your production. Thanks, guys, for answering my text this morning about all wearing blazers today. I'm so glad we got on the same page about that.
After this.
So next episode, we are going to have an episode the week of Christmas. That'll drop right after Christmas. We appreciate all of our listeners. Please send us any of your feedback. Feedback is a gift. So ComplianceLIVE at ComplianceLine.com. After that, I'm Amanda Hosenfeld.
I'm Cailyn Gomka.
I'm Giovanni Gallo.
I'm Nick Gallo.
And stay compliant.